Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bhajanini Vishesha Sanyavari Vastu Chadvi Sutana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was told to pick any verse in chapter 2. So, do the devotees have books? No. Okay. Text 40, chapter 2. Neha bikramana sosti pratyavayo na vidyate svalpyam yasya dampasya trayate mahato bhayat. Translation. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Purport. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. %1 done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. Ajamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There is a nice verse in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam. Tyaktva svadhamam charanam bhujam harir bhajan apakvota patit to yadi yatra kva vabhajam abud amushikim kovarta opto bhajatam svadharmata. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness, and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world, yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness, even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of great cultured Brahmin or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Nangayate Garim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shanyavari Paschachade Satarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is a very important verse. Srila Prabhupada would quote it quite frequently. Prabhupada would quote it because many people were taking to Krishna consciousness, and he was observing they were surrendering everything. That's how Prabhupada preached. He used to speak to others and introducing his disciples and saying, my disciples, they've given everything to Krishna. No fault should be made. Sometimes, I remember one conversation Prabhupada was having with one Indian gentleman. He was suggesting that the devotees were not pronouncing Sanskrit properly. And Prabhupada, of course, translated the Sanskrit for us, introduced Sanskrit to us. We came from a Western background. Not all of us knew how to be perfect Sanskritists, pronouncing everything properly. And one gentleman was trying to suggest that his disciples were defective because they could not pronounce properly. And Prabhupada would always defend, in this particular case, he said, he quoted the verse, Yena tena pakarina mana Krishna neveshaya, that it is the duty of the spiritual master to somehow or other get his dependents to fix their mind on Krishna. If that's done, then everything else can come later. But most important was how to fix their mind in Krishna consciousness. people were coming to the Krishna consciousness movement. They were giving up. And Prabhupada would oftentimes state he's given up everything. He would speak about his disciple. I remember one time he was speaking about his disciple Giriraj Maharaj. Came from a wealthy family, went to India, was serving him there. His father was trying to get him to come back to America. Couldn't understand what's my son doing in India. He was a wealthy man. He was saying, I'll give you $1 million if you come back. And Giriraj Maharaj was not interested. Then Prabhupada, of course, was very, I don't want to say proud because it would suggest that he was proud of his own efforts, but he was never that way. Prabhupada was always very humble, and he was always attributed that anybody's surrender in Krishna consciousness was simply due to the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In fact, I remember one time, a little side story, I'll get back to the point about surrendering everything in a second. I was reading Prabhupada's diary that he had written in 1965, before it was published. I somehow got a copy of it. And when I got the devotee who had the copy, it was the original book and it hadn't been seen by anybody yet. He asked me, Maharaj, I have Prabhupada's diary from 1965. This devotee had it in his possession and never told anyone he had it. And finally, he gave it to the archives for archiving purposes. He said, would you like to see it? I said, what kind of question is that? Would I like to see it? He said, okay, you can take it with you on one condition. He says, when you can go in the other room and read it, but I'm going to lock you in the room. Make sure I didn't run off with it. So I was thumbing through the diary and I found this entry from February 1966. And Prabhupada had written in his diary entry about how on that particular day he had done a recording of the Sankirtan. Some recording was done with a few of his new followers. And Prabhupada was saying that I have personally witnessed today that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that anyone who comes in contact with the holy name of the Lord, by the potency of the holy name, then even the animals can chant, dance in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, I have witnessed that today. And he was kind of alluding to the fact that, because this was February 1966, kinds of people who were coming to Krishna consciousness were of hippies. But then he went on to say, such is the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such is the potency of Lord Chaitanya. He said, this is not my credit. This is his potency. And anyone who comes in contact with these names, their lives will change. Of course, that was Prabhupada's purity. He had no pride. He would always give credit to his superiors, to the order of his spiritual master, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he considered himself an instrument in their hands. And nonetheless, he would defend his disciples, saying that they're very pure, they've given everything to Krishna. And he was very proud, about when I was giving the example of Giriraj Maharaj, because he was an example of somebody who could have had so much materially, but he was not interested at all, because he was interested only in giving his life to Krishna. I bring this point up because Prabhupada quotes the verse in the commentary, Tyaktva svardamam sharanam bhujan harer. This verse is by Narada Muni, in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Narada Muni, as we know in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni was feeling a little bit disappointed. Vyasadeva was feeling a little bit disappointed because he had compiled all the Vedic literatures, the Vedanta Sutras, Mahabharata, but he was still feeling a little dissatisfaction within, and he was trying to understand the cause of his despondency. And Narada Muni, his spiritual master, appeared before him and told him, because you have failed to glorify the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted, anyone who comes in contact with the pastimes of the Supreme Lord can begin his devotional life and become directly attracted to the Lord. He said, because you have not directly glorified the pastimes of the Lord, people will become bewildered about what is the path of religion, especially in this age of Kali Yuga. Better they come in contact with the pastimes of the Lord, because they are so transcendentally sweet and pure that anyone who hears them, that message, then they'll give their hearts to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they will surrender to the Lord. So Narada Muni quoted this verse, Chakvasvadanam charanam puja hariya. He said, one who forsakes his material occupation to engage in a devotional service of the Lord, he may fall down in an immature stage, but there's never danger of his being unsuccessful. There's never, same thing Krishna is saying in this verse. In this endeavor, there's never any loss, never any diminution. So Narada Muni said the same thing to Vyas. He said, one who forsakes his material occupation, he may give up his work. He may give up, he may surrender, he may sacrifice, and give everything. Just as many of Srila Prabhupada's followers and disciples, they were ready to give anything to serve Krishna, sacrifice anything. And we saw devotees coming again and again and again, giving up their jobs. Some of them, of course, were giving up a little bit prematurely. We don't say it was necessarily always the right thing for every individual, but they were ready to do that for Prabhupada. He said he may fall down in an immature stage, but there's never danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, even if he fulfills all his material duties perfectly, he will not gain anything. Next verse is Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabhate yad brahmatamu pariyada. This verse describes that how an intelligent person, he surrenders to the Supreme Lord. He knows that happiness derived from sense enjoyment, it can automatically be obtained in due course of time, just as in due course of time a person attains miseries without asking for them. From the highest planet to the lowest planet, all the places of repeated birth and death, as Krishna said. And then the next verse, Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, he says, my dear Vyas, even if a devotee, he says, my dear Vyas, anyone who has once tasted the nectar from Krishna's lotus feet, he'll never be able to forget that ecstasy again and again and again. He'll never become a fruitive worker again, because he'll never be able to forget that ecstasy from tasting Krishna's pastimes. These instructions from Narada Muni to Vyasadeva were meant to induce him to take up the work of giving the commentary of the Vedanta Sutra, which are the pastimes of the Lord in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because there's never any loss. One cannot lose if one surrenders to Krishna. Difficulty is, of course, sometimes people, they look back, they reflect, I surrendered, I gave everything. Sometimes they think that I gave everything, but I didn't achieve the ultimate goal. I didn't achieve pure Krishna consciousness in the amount of time that I thought I could obtain it when I surrendered. I didn't get the ecstasy which Srila Prabhupada talked about, chant and be happy. I chanted, but I wasn't always so happy. They may look at different things and look back on their surrender with remorse, saying, why did I surrender? Why did I surrender? I could have been successful. Of course, somebody who thinks like this doesn't know what the criteria of success is. Because as Narada Muni said to Vyas, even if a non-devotee perfectly engages his occupational activities, there's no success for him. He doesn't gain anything. Why? Because he loses it all at the end of life. This is not success for the spirit soul. Prabhupada in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, he says how people struggle so hard to protect their possessions. They try to keep them and they enjoy them to their fullest extent throughout their life. And he says, at the time of death, they take nothing with them except their sinful reactions. This is all they take. Everything else stays behind. Someone may say, well, at least I enjoyed in life. But unfortunately, such pleasure in this life is not necessarily going to be beneficial for the advancement of the spirit soul. Prabhupada used to quote one verse. I don't remember the Sanskrit, forgive me, but I remember the English, where he's speaking about, it's by Chanakya Pandit, that, O Prince, may you live a long life. O Brahmachari, may you die now. O saintly person, whether you live, whether you die, no difference. But you, O butcher, don't live and don't die. And he explains what the intent behind this verse is, that the prince is reaping the fruits of his previous pious activities. He has opulence, he's enjoying, he's very happy. So he's given the benediction, may you live a long life, because when it's over, you've already reaped the results of your past activities. Now, what will be next is the consequences for enjoying those things and not offering them to the Lord. So, Prince, may you live a long life. Because at the end of this life, in your next life, there'll be more reactions and you'll have to take another birth. Oh, Brahmachari, you're performing austerities, living very simply, you have no attachments. Verse is a blessing. Oh, Brahmachari, may you die now. Not literally. Sometimes I have to say that the brahmacharis may take that literally and think, oh, I should hope for death. No. But the intent behind it is, yes, now your life is so simple. You have no possessions, no bank accounts. You have no big bills, family bills. You have no family responsibilities. You have no work. You're not entangled yet. May you die now, before it happens. O saintly person, whether you live, whether you die, makes no difference. Because for the saintly person, their life is fully dedicated to service to the Lord. With their living, they're satisfied by their fixing their consciousness on the Supreme. They're satisfied by the execution of their devotional activities. And if they die, what difference does it make? They're simply going to engage in the same activities and not have to take their birth again in the material world. So saintly person, whether he lives or dies, not so important. But you, O butcher, don't live. Because by your living, you're causing so much pain to living entities. So better you don't live because you're causing pain. But don't die either. Because if you die, all that pain you've caused to those living entities is going to come back on you. So he's given the benediction, don't live, don't die. So the prince, as we said, What is the value? There's a verse in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. What is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted by many years in this world? Better one moment of full consciousness, because that will enable him to search after his ultimate interest. What is the value of prolonging the life, a life of sense enjoyment, when the life is only accumulating sinful reactions or pious reactions, either sinful or pious, which means that one has to take birth again. Rather than having a prolonged life of enjoyment, better one moment of full consciousness. Because in that one moment of full consciousness, it will give one the impetus to search after his ultimate interest. One moment of full consciousness. That's what Krishna is saying in this verse. He says, in this endeavor, there's never any loss. Any activity engaged in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results. There's never any loss. No loss, no diminution. And a little advancement in this path protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. What is the most dangerous type of fear? Forgetting Krishna, actually. That is the most dangerous type of fear. Antakali chamamiva smaran mokva kalevram. Krishna says, whoever ever remembers me at the time of giving up this body, he at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Whoever remembers me, that's the final examination, the final test is how, at the time of leaving this world, this mortal frame, what will one's consciousness be? What will be the next destination that he'll be carried forward as a result of the activities performed in this life? Therefore, any surrender in Krishna consciousness, if one really understands, if it was performed in this endeavor, Krishna says, there's no loss or diminution. What does he mean by in this endeavor? Well, let's look at the previous verse. Previous verse, Krishna says, now listen as I explain it in terms, this knowledge in terms of working without fruitive results. When you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. Acting in knowledge, and working without fruitive results. What does it mean to work without fruitive results? It means to offer the fruits of one's work for the satisfaction of Krishna. Yagyatat kamanonyonja loko yam karma bandhana. Work performed as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord has to be performed in this world. Otherwise, karma bandhana. Otherwise, one becomes entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. Therefore, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. That way you will remain unattached and freed from bondage. Work in Krishna consciousness. This is the challenge. This is the challenge that's put before everyone who comes to the Krishna consciousness movement. There's a reason why Prabhupada chose to be the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Someone tried to suggest to Prabhupada, why don't you call it the International Society for God Consciousness? But Prabhupada was not in the least bit interested. He understood that this International Society for Krishna Consciousness is meant for invoking consciousness of Krishna. And in various ways, Krishna has given his instructions in the Bhagavad Gita about how to remember him. Tasmata Saveshu Bhuteshu Mama Nusmara Yudhyacha Mayaprata Mano Buddhya Mamish Vaishya Asangshaya. He says, perform your prescribed duties to Arjuna of fighting, and at the same time think of me. With your activities dedicated to me, with your mind and intelligence fixed upon me, you will come to me surely. Of this there's no doubt. Krishna gives his assurance. In many places, Krishna gives his assurance. He gives guarantees. Yaidam paramam guyam madbhaktesha bhajasyati. He says, for one who explains this supreme secret of devotional service, of bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, for him devotional service is guaranteed. Again, guaranteed. And in the end, he comes back to me. Nachatasman manusheshu kashchin me priyakritama. There's no servant in this world who's more dear to me than he. Nor will there ever be one more dear. Krishna gives his assurances of his protection for those who make the effort to think of him. Machchita magatapana bodhiyaktakparasparam. The thoughts of my devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered unto me. They derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. Everywhere in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is placing the emphasis that the purpose of our activities in the Krishna consciousness movement is to somehow or other to remember Krishna. Yena tena prakarya mana Krishna niveshaya. If remembrance of Krishna is there, there can never be any loss. Krishna will not forget. He'll never forget anyone who tries to remember him. That's why Narada says, anyone who gets a taste of remembrance of the lotus feet of Krishna will never be able to forget that ecstasy again and again. This is how to capture his attention. This is how to, and when one captures his attention, then this is how to be protected from the most dangerous type of fear. Right? Capture his attention means to become under his protection. Because if Krishna never forgets anyone who makes any effort to remember him, therefore he tells Arjuna, Kauntiyata patijanihi nami bhaktya pranashyati. You declare it boldly, Arjuna, my devotee is never vanquished. Can never be vanquished. What is a devotee? A devotee is somebody who thinks of Krishna. Manmana bhava mad bhakta mad yaji man namaskaru. Always think of me. Worship me. Offer your homage to me. This is what he's asking for. This is the surrender that he's asking for, just that we try to remember him. Therefore, anyone who works in this consciousness, Krishna is saying, he can't lose. There's no failure. Someone may say, I gave so much. Well, you gave so much to whom? If you gave so much, who did you give it to? And the consciousness should be, I'm giving it to Krishna. It's my offering. We read the other day, Prahlad Maharaj gave the example of when somebody offers something to Krishna, he says it's just like a person who, a woman who comes, decorates her face in the mirror. When she decorates her face in the mirror, then simultaneously the reflection is decorated. No separate effort has to be done. Decorate the face in the mirror. It's not like you, after you finish decorating the face, then you have to go to the mirror and decorate that too. It's done. Prahlad Maharaj uses that example to demonstrate that when you give something to Krishna, you benefit. You benefit. Anything given to Krishna is always for the eternal benefit of the offering. Krishna is so pleased that he's so eager to take something which is offered with love and devotion. Patsa pushpam palam toyam yomi bhakya prayachati. If one offers me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, water, with love and devotion, he said, I'm very eager to take it. But for Krishna, what is a leaf? Everything is his. What is a flower? Piece of fruit, a little water. Everything belongs to him. It's insignificant in comparison to what he possesses. But why is he so interested to accept it? Even to the point of sometimes his devotee might even have something that he wants to give Krishna, and yet he hasn't even offered it yet. Like in the example of Sudama Brahman, Krishna snatched it right from his hand before he even offered it. Why did he want it? He wanted it because it was of the devotion, the bhakti, the love. In this endeavor, Krishna says, in this endeavor there's no loss or diminution. And a little advancement in this endeavor will always protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. I'm supposed to end at 7:30. I wanted to read one little reference. I hope I can find it. About in the beginning. Because sometimes people are bewildered. They think, what have I accomplished? Will I be protected? Krishna only protects his pure devotees. Won't protect somebody like me. Why should I make an effort? I have no hope. I have no hope. When I hear about these pure devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam, I think, yeah, they're special cases. They're in Srimad Bhagavatam. But what's that got to do with me? I'm not a special case. Yes, Krishna reciprocates with them. He protects them. We see so many examples how Krishna protects his devotees in the Bhagavatam. But does that apply to me? Well, someone may think that way. But this verse smashes that to pieces. It applies to anyone who works in this consciousness, even for a moment. Even one moment in that consciousness will never be lost. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is one purport by Srila Prabhupada. And let me see if I can find it. I know where it is. I just need to find it. Yes, I found it. It's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, 4th chapter. It's about Maharaj Ambarish. And is the curtains going to open at 7:30? No. I'm just supposed to stop at 7:30, right? That's the...
I think that's for question and answer.
I don't know. I just saw 6:30 to 7:30. I don't know. I'm usually pretty conscientious about following the local rules and regulations. Huh? Okay.
Doesn't open until 8.
Huh?
It doesn't open up until 8.
Doesn't open till 8. Uh-huh. Okay. Here's a verse. Pragdishtam pritya rakshayam purushena mahatmana dadaha krityam tam chakram krudhahim iva pavaka. As fire in the forest immediately burns to ashes an angry snake, so by the previous order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, immediately burned to ashes the created demon to protect the Lord's devotees. I'll get to the purport, but I want to put this in context. It's a well-known pastime when Lord Vishnu protects Ambarish Maharaj. When Durvasa Muni was very disturbed because Maharaj Ambarish was engaged in a fast, performing a fast. Durvasa Muni had come to his palace, and he wanted to take his bath first. And yet Maharaj Ambarish had to break his fast because he had been fasting for a whole year. And he didn't want to break his fast before Durvasa Muni. He offered Durvasa Muni some proper reception by offering him some food. But yet he couldn't because the time for breaking his fast was coming. So he consulted with the Brahmins, and the Brahmin says if you drink a little water, that's considered to be both fasting and not fasting. So you can break your fast by drinking a little water. So Maharaj Ambarish drank a little water, and when Durvasa Muni returned from taking his bath, because he's a mystic yogi, he could immediately understand that Maharaj Ambarish had, what in his conception, had eaten before him. And he's known for getting a little angry. It's his proclivity. So he decided that he would curse Maharaj Ambarish. And he cursed him, and he invoked a demon to destroy him for having offended him by honoring food or honoring drinking water before he was properly received. The Lord, because Maharaj Ambarish was fully under the protection of the Lord, the Lord invoked his Sudarshan Chakra to destroy the demon. And then that Sudarshan Chakra began chasing Durvasa Muni. There's another whole story, but I don't want to, it's a very important part of that pastime. But I'm not going to go there, because I want to specifically emphasize the point and address the question. These are special personalities, and this protection that they got from the Lord is because they're pure devotees, they're in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna protects them. But what about somebody like me? What have I accomplished in this life? And what have I offered to the Lord? What have I done for him? Of course, we may think that way out of humility. But even if one moment, one offered something for Krishna's pleasure, his devotional life begins. In fact, Prabhupada even one time said, it's a well-known story, 26 2nd Avenue, when some drunkard it was the first place where Srila Prabhupada was preaching in New York in 1965, 66. And some drunkard had come had previously been there, and obviously he found there was something lacking. So when the drunkard came into the front door of 26 2nd Avenue carrying a roll of toilet paper, and he walked into the back of the room, walked into the toilet, put it down, closed the door, and left. And Prabhupada saw him and said, just see, his devotional service has begun. He's offered something to Krishna. That was Prabhupada's perfect vision, called Agyata Sukriti. Agyata Sukriti means unknowingly. Unknowingly, one offers something to the Lord and one gets credit for that offering. One's devotional service can begin by such Agyata Sukriti. So, in the instance of Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish, this verse again is saying, as fire in the forest burns to ashes immediately, an angry snake, so by the previous order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, immediately burned to ashes the created demon to protect the Lord's devotee. Purport. As a pure devotee, Maharaj Ambarish, although in such danger, did not move an inch from his position. Nor did he request the Supreme Personality of Godhead to give him protection. In other words, he was so fixed in Krishna consciousness, when he saw imminent danger, he just did what was most naturally for him. He remembered Krishna, because that's what he does. He just remembers Krishna under all circumstances. That's his natural proclivity, as demonstrated by his devotion. So he didn't even think to ask the Lord, please protect me. Didn't think of it. But of course, because he was so absorbed in Krishna consciousness, the Lord certainly gave his protection. He was fixed in understanding, and it was certain that he was simply thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the core of his heart. A devotee is never fearful of his death, for he meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead always, not for any material profit, but as his duty. The Lord, however, knows how to protect his devotee, as indicated by the words pragdishtam. The Lord knew everything. In other words, savasya, what is it? Matak Smriti Jnanam Apohan. What is Savasya Chaham? I forgot the verse. Matak Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. Right? Tisava Ahamavi Veda Vedanta Kudveda Vedeva Chaham. Okay. My memory is failing me as I'm getting older. These verses, I used to memorize all these verses when I was out distributing books in the streets. I memorized so many of them, but now, after 50 years, sometimes they disappear. So, Krishna says, for me becomes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So, and not only that, but Krishna, who is situated within the heart, he knows the devotee who's remembering him. He says, Te shamivano kampartama hamagyana jam tama. Out of compassion, I am situated within the heart. I destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge, the darkness born of ignorance. He knows everything that is situated within the heart of every living being. So therefore, as indicated by the words Pragdishtam, the Lord knew everything. Therefore, before anything happened, he had already arranged for his chakra to protect Maharaj Ambarish. This protection is offered to a devotee even from the very beginning of his devotional service. Kaunteya patijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. This verse, Krishna says to Arjuna, you declare it boldly, Arjuna, my devotee is never vanquished. So, if one simply begins devotional service in the way described, by remembering the Lord, offering to the Lord, that is the beginning, even for a moment. As Bhagavatam says, even one moment of full consciousness, this will enable him to search after his ultimate interest. What is the value of prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by so many years in this world? Better one moment of full consciousness. So this protection is offered to the devotee even from the very beginning of his devotional service. If one simply begins devotional service, he is immediately protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Aham tvam sava papyebhyo mokshyasami. Protection begins immediately. The Lord is so kind and merciful that he gives the devotee proper guidance and all protection. And thus the devotee very peacefully makes solid progress in Krishna consciousness without outward disturbances. Of course, this is somebody who begins devotional service and continues devotional service in the right, proper consciousness. Sometimes we begin in the right consciousness, but sometimes things aren't so peaceful. Sometimes we become very disturbed by small upheavals. We become disturbed by small, minor, as Prabhupada calls them, minor offenses. We become so angry for somebody for doing something that causes us so much disturbance, and we think, my minds become so disturbed that we think about how to get vengeance for some mistreatment. But yet, here's a verse which describes a devotee, Taraskrita vipralabda kshapta kshiptaha tahapi nasyatat patikurvanti tad bhakta kavayopihi. The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even if they're cheated, they're cursed, they're neglected, disturbed, insulted, or even killed, they're never inclined to avenge themselves. This is a characteristic of a devotee. He peacefully goes on engaging in his service because he understands this is offering to Krishna. Krishna knows. Krishna is in my heart. Krishna is in their heart. Krishna is in the heart of all living beings. It's the same Krishna in everyone's heart. He knows what I'm doing. He knows what I'm offering to him. He knows my prayers. He's in my heart. He knows my desires, just like a person understands the fragrance of a flower by simply being next to the flower. Krishna knows because he's situated within the heart and knows everyone. So if a devotee goes on simply serving, then right from the very beginning he is given this protection. Krishna will not forget that service. This is the essence of this verse of Bhagavad Gita, to be protected from the most dangerous type of fear. And the most dangerous type of fear for a devotee is not to be protected physically from harm. The most dangerous type of fear of a devotee is to forget Krishna. Therefore, if we associate with devotees who are always reminding us about Krishna, if we take the opportunity to hear about Krishna in the association of devotees, if we chant Krishna's name sincerely, trying to every day render some service, anything that will help us to remember him, then the devotee will steadily make progress and will be protected, ultimately, from the most dangerous type of fear, even at the time of death. We may forget, but we can't even remember unless Krishna agrees to manifest himself in our minds. We're fully dependent upon him. He is completely independent, Supreme Personality of Godhead. All we must do is make the effort, and that's all he wants to see. Make the effort. Krishna ends Bhagavad Gita saying, in all activities just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, you should be conscious of me. If you're conscious of me, you'll cross over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. But if you're not conscious of me, and you act through false ego, not remembering me, you'll be lost. Simple activity. Everything that we do is ultimately aimed to help us to remember that we're servants of Krishna. We should be careful to not forget that. And if we remember that, by regularly hearing about it and associating with devotees, we can be assured of the same protection that is available to all of these devotees as they have been described in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. I'll stop here. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions?
I have a question. Is it that the greatest danger is
You have to speak louder.
the greatest danger is to forget Krishna, and in our day-to-day life, we see that when we do morning program and chant our rounds, and so that time we are aware and conscious of Krishna, but in the due course of the day, when we do other activities, like we may be students or working professionals, or we may have some service, so then the consciousness is not very much fixed on remembering Krishna. So, like Krishna said, remembering me, fight to Arjuna.
Is what?
Krishna said to Arjuna that remembering me, like Mama Anusmara Yuddhasya, so how do we do our duties in that consciousness?
Well, just as you said, if we have the morning program and we have these engagements that help us to remember Krishna every day, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavyo Najatu Chit Sarvavidi Nisedasyo Etiyo Evakinkara. Krishna must always be remembered, should not be forgotten. All the rules and all the prohibitions which are given in the scriptures are meant to serve these two principles. So by engaged in regulated activities, what is that verse in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? My dear Arjuna, if you cannot fix your mind upon me constantly, then follow the rules and regulations of devotional service. In this way you will develop the desire to attain me. Forget the Sanskrit. It is. But the point is, that's supposed to help you for the rest of the day. The regulated activities. That's supposed to help you remember why you're doing these other activities. Doing these other activities, we may be doing some service in the temple, we may be working in the office. Well, we've explained so many times that whatever work that we perform to maintain body and soul together is a support. It's a support. It's called Gaunadhamma. Gaunadhamma means it's secondary duties that support us, our primaries, our Mukhya Dhamma. Mukhya Dhamma is what you do in the morning. Hearing, chanting, remembering, speaking about. These activities are the one of the, or two or three are the 9 angas of bhakti, of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Hearing, chanting, and remembering. These are meant to help us make progress in the path of devotional service. And they should be done daily. He said, Krishna says, follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. He's not telling Arjuna to no meat, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. He's telling Arjuna, regulate your life to remember me. If you can't, because why? Because you can't remember me all the time. So therefore, regulate your life means, okay, if you can't remember you all the time, then do it every day. That's your bhakti. Ideal is you remember me all the time. That's the ideal. And then Krishna gradually makes his concessions. If you can't think of me, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. So you do that every day. And if you work to maintain body and soul together, then as long as you're working to maintain body and soul together so that you can use it for your Mukhya Dhamma, which is hearing, chanting, and remembering, then it's a support. So you should be thinking, I'm doing this not for fruitive gain, I'm doing this to maintain body and soul together. I maintain the body and soul together of other family members. And to give them the basic necessities of life so they can live in this world and they also can hear and chant about Krishna and perform sadhana. That's how you think of Krishna. And it means seeing things in the proper perspective. But Krishna, Bhagavatam says, Kamasya nendriya pratya labo jiveta yavata, that life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire to live only because the human form of life enables him to inquire into the absolute truth. This should be the goal of all of his work. Doesn't work for sense gratification. He works to maintain the body so that he can inquire about the nature of the absolute truth and render service to the Lord. Then it's put everything's in the right perspective. Does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to stop here, and I believe they're going to serve prasadam, which is the next part of the program. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.